Councilmember Schulman,
Here.
Councilmember Hubert,
Here.
Councilmember Roach, here. The first order of business is appointing of the committee chair.
Okay, yes, I will be the appointment of the committee chair. However, Carrie Hubler is going to be a part of the finance committee, is what we have decided. Do we all agree? Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Now, chair,
And now
Jen, is
I-
yours.
Okay, now we're moving on to item D, approval of minutes. I can go over the minutes. Was there any corrections? Okay, excellent. Just let us know if you do. Moving down then to item E, we have our department reports and presentations. Take it away, East Pierce Fire and Rescue for our monthly report.
All right. Well, since there's a couple new people who haven't met, I'm John Parkinson, Fire Chief of East Pierce. So my report begins on page 5, and I'll just go through our stats. I'll go through these a little more in depth since I know a couple people haven't seen them before, and so you understand what you're looking at. Beginning on page 5, what you're looking at is calls for service compared to 2024 to 2023 in service areas. So when it says Bonnie Lake Station 111, that's talking about the Bonnie Lake service area, not necessarily the city limits. And so what call volumes are doing year to year. This early in the year, stats are always going to be a little bit off, and especially with the cold snap that we had in early July, we're going to see some abnormalities as far as call volumes go, either increases or decreases. And in this case, Bonnie Lake showing that it had a what seems like a substantial call jump, but at the end of the day, that should start to normalize over the next month or so. The next page goes out into the metrics that, sorry, I lost my screen here, that internally we really more care about, and it's how we're doing with response times, and so how long it takes us to drive to incidents once we're dispatched. So if you're looking at those and you're comparing 2023 to 24, this is where you're going to see all the abnormalities, and that our drive time or travel times have jumped up by, in some cases, something like a minute. And that would all be because we're working with a small data set. And during the cold weather, we would have been traveling much slower and being a lot more delayed because of call volumes and everything. So I would expect to see that start to normalize over the next couple of months as we get a larger data set to work from. Next page after that just shows the 5-year call trend. Again, we've stayed relatively flat over the last 3 years prior to this. The next page after that shows call volume by individual unit. And again, just the trends are kind of anomalies right now with big spikes and drops just because of just unusual weather that early in the year and small data sets. And then last page is just going to show our normal breakout of incident by type. Typically where we're going to end up there is our biggest piece of the pie is going to be EMS calls, which usually lands right around 75%. Just for general information and updates, as far as fire stations go, and starting off with our Bonnie Lake station, things are still progressing along. We're about 1 month behind schedule right now, and really our biggest sticking point is being able to get a roof on the building. Just because the amount of time that they need the stretch they need of dry weather, they're just not able to get right now. So they're about 2/3 of the way done with it, but that's delaying getting everything dried in and all the mechanical and electrical going inside. So, but windows are finally on site, so we're starting to work on that, and it's we're getting there. So as of right now, that would put substantial completion somewhere in late June. The other stations on Westlake Taps.
Sorry, 1 second. Late June completion for the roof or just?
For the building.
Okay, great.
Yeah. So, and then we're looking at about a month after that to be able to occupy.
Okay.
So major hang up right now is that though, is getting the building dried in. Other 2 stations that are underway right now, our Westlake Tap Station is about tied for progress with the Bonnie Lake Station, and the Tahale Station is still in getting a lot of foundation work. And I just bring up those stations because they do impact Bonnie Lake eventually. With when Tahale is open, it'll decrease the demand on Bonnie Lake, and as we reoccupy the Westlake Tap Station, it will also impact Bonnie Lake, so we won't be covering the west side of the lake quite as much out of this station. Next item is our Milton Fire Station went in service for the first time ever, it's a new station for us being staffed 24/7. So that went into service last week on the 7th, Wednesday, the 7th.
That's Milton.
Yeah, so that puts a second unit up covering both Edgewood and Milton. And again, things that, seem distant and wouldn't really impact Bonnie Lake. The amount of time that Sumner was spending going up into Edgewood and Milton because of subsequent incidents was pretty substantial, which means that Bonnie Lake is then going to cover Sumner because it's really our biggest or our busiest single city and service area. So as we make those improvements, we've seen the demand on Sumner going up into Edgewood, Milton drop by over half already. So that means that's less demand on Bonnie Lake in turn. And then just last update, our commissioners will be taking action next Tuesday to pass a resolution which will place our fire levy lift on the ballot in April. And so next month I'll talk a bit more about that and discuss the need and the why and everything else. But that is all I have. If there are any questions.
What is the levy lid right now?
So
1%?
on our we have two different levies that fund us. We have three different items or levies that we collect on, but one of them being a bond levy. So not counting that, we have an EMS levy and a fire levy. The fire levy is capped by state law at $1.50 right now. We're at $1.09. I'm leaving out all the decimal points out of that. And the EMS levy is capped at 50 cents. And right now we're collecting at 36, but I believe we're authorized at 41 cents right now.
I have a question.
Yes.
What's the overpressure?
Say that again?
Overpressure? Incident type?
On the incident type, it's something that's off gassing or something like that. It's a category that's set up at the national level, So it could be anything like a leaking propane tank or something like that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I had a question. What? Oh, yes, looking at the 5-year trend,
Yes.
prior to kind of before that and then after that in the charts, you were saying that, you're expected to see those kind of level out.
Yes.
But with the 5-year trend, what are your thoughts on the fact that the 3 previous years were?
It's due to start heading upwards. And if you just look kind of service area things that we're starting to see, Milton has some more commercial adult family care centers going in, and just the build out of Tahale itself, the rate of growth. So we're at a point where we're going to start seeing trends if nothing else happens around us. But then kind of knowing that Bonnie Lake's really more in an infill phase right now. We're not seeing a ton of growth call volume wise here. Good thing. But as Sumner starts to build out its core, so any of those things will start to trend us upwards.
Okay, excellent. All right, we're going to move on to Bonnie Lake Police Department monthly report. Chief Barry.
Well, this will be a good exercise in my memory as I'm having a catastrophic Adobe failure right now. Let's get through my stats.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jason.
I was bringing out a copy.
Good teamwork going on here.
It's just a test.
I don't know if you can read it. It did print out pretty small.
Oh, we're good. We're good. Yeah.
Oh, you're doing the 2-pager.
Yeah, the nice thing about our stats, as you look at them actually, is you just see a general decline in almost all categories of crime in the city, which has been the way it's been trending since I've been here. It was probably trending that way before I got here, but definitely since I got here. With a few exceptions, and they've been the continued exceptions. Extortion, and I know that seems like a big one. That is mostly, again, internet-based, where we have people meeting people on chat lines, and then, they exchange pictures and then they get blackmail for those pictures not to get sent back out. And the other one was arson. Arson's really, it's 1 over, so it's not a significant factor when we have so few of them anyway. Domestic violence crimes continue to go down. We're a little high on suicides and attempted suicides right now. Some of that I do attribute also to the overdoses of fentanyl, because we don't know why people are passed out and incapacitated. So a lot of times I think those are getting miscategorized. And then the holiday seasons are always a tough time. Juvenile arrests I've talked about before continues to be very high. Whether that's from stolen cars, shoplifting, this general sense that's out there. You can see in all the news articles all throughout the region is not a Bonnie Lake specific incident. So that one is growing, but we're not growing larger than other cities in the same region. So overall, if you look for our calls for service, we're quite a few, about 2,000 calls for service less this year at this point in time, which is fantastic. To me, that means, I've said this before, but I'm gonna keep repeating it, that means our police officers have more time. So I would expect to see an increase in proactive traffic stops, infractions and citations, and that is what we're seeing. So that tells me that time is being used appropriately. And that's really kind of my quick summary on the statistics. Are there any of these incidents that you were curious about?
I just want to make sure, so on the where it says year to date for 2022, that was
At this point in
2022
time,
of that
Yeah.
time, so for basically in January, and then.
yeah, it's kind of counterintuitive. Last year is the last column instead of being
Okay,
this year.
that's good.
I'm assuming that the drugs and narcotics offenses being so low is still due to the change in laws.
A lot of that is due to the change of law with the Blake decision. We do have new laws as of August, we were able to start enforcing those.
Okay,
But
so
they're-
would we expect those numbers to go up then as a result?
I will expect those numbers. to go up.
Okay,
Yeah, absolutely.
okay, but maybe going back to what they were previously?
I think it'll be kind of between. I don't think we'll get that. A lot of the narcotics, task forces and special units were disbanded. And now with all the police staffing issues people are having, we're just not seeing those. There's also a real, hesitancy to do follow-up search warrants at the local level, because of some violent actions that have occurred. I will expect to see narcotics arrests going up.
Okay. Do you have any other questions or two?
I was gonna ask on the suicide, you said sometimes it's hard to tell, but I mean, how do you come to the conclusion with the medical examiner? Like,
So our detectives will do the follow-up and then the medical examiner. So exactly, sometimes we have a case that's an overdose, but you don't know unless you have a note to say it was a suicide, right? A lot of times that will start off as an overdose, may get cleared as a suicide or an attempt suicide or not. So the conclusion between it being a medical event and it being an attempt suicide will be between the detective investigating it and the medical examiner.
now I'm gonna ask you, so it tends to be down on most streams, that you see that around the other cities as well, they say you're sending.
No, I mean, I don't wanna say, hey, things are just unicorns here, but, you look at violent crime throughout Pierce County and especially in the larger cities, violent crime is on the rise. Car thefts actually as a region are starting to come down. So that's consistent with what we're seeing. But as far as robberies, forcible sex, shooting, homicides, all of those things are at record levels in other places. And we're seeing those continue to be very low for us.
I was curious if there was a way to track kind of in just the numbers or calls that then become mental health. I guess, what do you do in that?
Well, we
instance,
could-
I guess?
We could check the disposition that which we have a mental health tab within Clarion. So I can pull data on how many cases are involving a mental health component, also a homelessness, because we are trying to track
Okay, yeah,
how
okay.
much of this.
Yeah,
So
I'm curious to see.
Yeah, absolutely.
What that is. I think that's all the questions I have. Do you have any more? No? Yes? Okay,
Yeah.
okay, we're gonna move on,
just take a picture of it.
to number 3, prosecutor's office monthly reports.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So in December, we had a total of 397 court hearings. That's when we're in court representing the city. That included 49 arraignments, so that's new charges being filed against a defendant. And then in January, we had 356 hearings, and 38 of those were arraignments, so the new charge against a defendant. Just some other statistics in December, we had just over 20 hours of body worn camera that we reviewed. And in January, we had just over 25 hours of body worn camera that we reviewed. In December, we sent 117 discovery packets to defense attorneys. And in January, it was 110 discovery packets. So that's where we've packaged together the police report, all of the statements, the photographs and the video evidence, and send it to the defense attorney. We also did organize a fentanyl 101 training for city staff in the courtroom or council chambers downstairs. It was a person from the Tacoma Pierce County Health Department. She talked about community resources, how to interact with people that are experiencing addiction or potentially showing signs of drug use, what to do if you come across drugs or drug paraphernalia. So for people that, because we do have people in this building who have front counter positions where they interact with members of the public, and we have code enforcement officers who are going out on site and interacting with people, and they don't get the same level of training that like a police officer would get to interact with those people. So it was to help them know about what's going on with fentanyl in the community and know how to what to do when they're interacting with people. Josh and I were raters for the YMCA regional mock trial competition at Pierce County Superior Court. So we were basically like the judges, and we got to grade the kids, high schoolers that were the pretend attorneys for the day. And that was a really good experience. They were really good. If you ever get a chance to be part of it, I would highly recommend it. On Tuesday, February 20th, we are anticipating having a case go to trial. It's a theft third-degree case. So I will, if it is actually going to trial, I'll send out an email on Friday confirming that, and it's open to the public, and you're welcome to come see all the hard work we do to go to trial and hold people accountable for the crimes they Tuesday, February 20th. So it's the day after President's Day.
What time for that?
Usually we really get started around like 8:30 or 9
Okay.
There's a chance that it might go away, but that's why I'll send out an email on Friday confirming.
Okay, so tonight, you probably don't want me to announce it then? That the public is welcome to attend?
You can announce it, but
Okay.
I mean,
Just the time is unknown, it could be.
there's always the chance. with
Yeah.
trials
Yeah,
That it could go away,
but
but
there's a lot,
yes.
yeah.
It is currently set for trial on the 12th. And then on Saturday, February 17th, there's a resource fair that's being organized by our community court case manager, Carla Lewis, and that's from noon to 3 p.m. in this building.
That was the 17th.
Yes, Saturday, February 17th.
The community resource fair. Oh, that's when we got the flyer.
Yeah, they taught right there. Okay, very good. Any questions?
How often do we go to trial? Is that pretty rare?
It depends. I think last year we had one trial, but then the year before that we had 3. So the last trial we had was January of 2023.
The fentanyl training. I love that you guys did that. How do we get that out to the general public and to like our students?
So she's with the, I can forward her contact information to you if you have, I mean, yeah.
I think that would be a great thing for more people to understand and know, especially the touch, the smells, you know, all that kind of stuff that goes along with it and what to do and what the signs and symptoms are. So that they have a little better understanding of, you know, especially with the amount that's being used. How can they offset or like, you know, when do they need to call 911 or what do they need to do? That's especially with our student population.
Yeah, we can do training in high school for that.
We did do a training.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so I don't have a good relationship with the school here. I don't really interact with them that much because their cases go to juvenile court, but I'd be happy to share their contact information. She did a really good job of showing like the blue pills up on the screen and with the 2 sides of them look like, so.
That'd be cool. Yeah, I'd love
Yeah,
that.
because unfortunately it's out there.
Very happy to.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Any other questions? Okay, we are gonna move on then to our code enforcement 2023 Q4 quarterly report.
Yeah.
Ethan Sullivan.
So Brady's gonna be pulling up a PowerPoint, she's gonna share the screen, we just wanna walk you through something real quick, after I go through these numbers, so. That's happening, I'll go through these numbers, so, we do reports quarterly and state monthly, just because our cases take a little bit longer to develop. In the Q4 of last year, we opened 30 new cases, and currently, and then closed, 41 cases. So we closed more than we opened, which is a good sign, we have currently 133, open cases. We collected almost $3,600 in civil penalties. Our objective isn't to collect civil penalties, but when people refuse to work with us, that's just kind of ultimately where we have to go. We currently have about $25,000 in outstanding civil penalties for a number of reasons. People refuse to pay or they're appealing their decisions. We do allow a free appeal to the hearing examiner. So if someone does get a civil penalty, they feel they can't pay it or they shouldn't have to pay it, they can file an appeal with us, and that's at no cost, so that the hearing examiner can hear those cases. The good news is we do now have a second code enforcement officer, so I did ask both our code enforcement officers to be here. Shandy Lankerson's been our Shandy Wilkinson has been our code enforcement officer for about a year and a half, and then Brandy, who has been serving as our administrator of 3 positions and is helping out tonight in that capacity, was hired as our second code enforcement officer in January. So hopefully in March, you'll see her transition off of doing minutes so she can spend her time doing the code enforcement activities. One big thing that we want to walk you through and report back on, and I think Councilmember Baldwin was the only one on the committee when this happened, but last summer we had a huge kind of outpouring in this committee from some citizens who wanted us to be a little bit more proactive with some of our nuisance properties, and had requested the council provide some money for code abatement, which the council did do. And this week we did earlier this month, we did our first abatement activity. And it was a joint operation between the police department, animal control, code enforcement, and also Regine and the emergency management office. We actually use it as a training operation for how to write IAPs, and we ran the whole thing like we would if it was an emergency. So if you go back to the next slide, we have a property kind of over by the park that has.
Is this the one that you're referring to?
Yes. That had been kind of a problem child for probably 15 years. It was owned by Ronald Denning, who had been in and out of courts, lots of different issues with animal control. We were finally to the point where we had gotten an order to declare the premises and the property unfit for human habitation. So on the 1st of February, the police, code enforcement, animal control, and public services all kind of joined forces on a joint operation that went really, really well. So next slide. So just some pictures. Where we added our public services crews to go and board up the property. So these are some slides of that kind of getting ready. If you go to the next slide, Brandy. This was the property that we kind of entered. Doesn't look too bad from the front, but when you get up close on the next slide, you'll start to see that the outside was pretty trashed in the back. And this is what the neighbors have been dealing with for probably over a decade. And this was the first time we were able to really take a concentrated effort to do that. So if you want to go to the next slide, Brandy. There's a kind of, you start to see that the building really was in a dilapidated state and not fit. It's hard to see from this picture, but the entire roof was covered in black tarps because it was leaking. And I forgot to mention that just happenstance, the night before we did this activity, there was a drug OD, and the police had to write a warrant to go in and pull the OD out of the house about 6 hours before we were going to shut it down. So it was kind of a weird kind of coincidence because it happened at the same time. So you want to go to the next one, Brandy? We did post it, as you'll see, on the face of the building that says no trespassing. Under the order that we got from the hearing examiner, the property is declared off limits unless we let people on the site, which means that if the police department sees someone on that property or in that house, they are violating the order, which is a misdemeanor and can be subject to arrest. So we have control of the property right now and are excluding people from coming back. There's technically no one who owns this property. Both of the owners have passed away, and it was truly turning into a squatting property. If you go to the next slide. So this is some pictures of the inside. It's pretty dilapidated and torn down. Go to the next slide, Brandy. People were living in this one. Squatters. So if you go to the next one. So that's what kind of the finished product. We didn't clean it because that's not what we were there for this time, but we did plywood all the doors, all the windows. We did take the officer step of also putting a liquid nail on the heads of all the nails and screws so that you can't just come up with a screwdriver. And then our building inspector had a little leftover liquid gas, so he thought it'd be fun to put extra dots. So there's some dots that don't have any screws on them, you can scrape it off and not have anything. So we thought that was kind of fun. So next steps is we're still working with the city's attorney's office to contact beneficiaries. As I said, both the person who owned the property passed away. He had a will, but it was never probated. And then the person who was supposed to inherit the property also subsequently passed away. So the property is just left out there in probate right now. We don't know who is going to eventually own it. We're working with the city attorney's office. We've got a copy of the will. We're working with those people that were named in the probate to try to figure out who's going to take ownership of the property. We're also, because of the condition of the property, we're pursuing further abatement actions once we get that information out to them, which could include the city going in and basically cleaning up the property, tearing it down. All costs that we are incurring, we're tracking and then filing as a tax bill on the property tax, which is authorized by state law. So when they pay their taxes, they will reimburse the city for our expenditures. That was the stuff that we did. Well, the police salaries, code enforcement salaries, the supplies we had to buy, the legal costs, we're tracking all those. And then when we do the abatement, we'll do the same thing. We'll track all those costs and then go after the property and make it reimburse the city.
Okay, so the beneficiaries at this point, whoever they are probably unaware that they own the property,
We believe that
that they would inherit.
we believe that one of the daughters doesn't know that she wants that she could inherit the property.
Okay.
She was part of the hearing, which when we got the property declared unfit for human habitation. However, whether she's going to take the steps to go through the expense of probating it and actually getting it to be her inheritance, we don't know.
You did also mention that civil penalty collection was at 3,600, but I read.
46.
Okay, just
I apologize.
no worries. Okay, any questions? Sure, yeah.
I was gonna add on with this situation here, how do we fund our program? We got this out of the general fund, or we recoup costs from the people that we work with?
Well, we're hoping that right now we had to get seed money to get it started, so about $1,000 that the council put in the biennium. We're hoping to have two funding sources for kind of as the program grows. One, the civil penalties themselves. As we collect civil penalties, those would help fund the program. And two, yes, any of the abatement costs we do, under this provision that we're using in state law, we can actually not lien the property, but we actually report it. We give it to the Pierce County tax assessor, and it goes on the tax assessment. So when they go to pay their 2024 property tax bill, that additional assessment would be due at that time and reimbursed to the city, which would come back to cover our cost. Both labor costs, fully loaded costs for the code enforcement officers and police officers, materials we buy. It's just not a quick thing. And so until we get this program up and running for a couple of years, I think there's always going to be a need to help kind of seed that program along until we start seeing kind of the reimbursements coming through. Because if, for example, like a squatting property, if we put it on the tax assessment, it's 3 years before they auction off the property.
Right.
And a tax sale. So it might not be until 2027 or 2028 until the city sees the repercussion.
I guess if we haven't already, we should look at Pierce counties. So when I was leaving, we implemented a program where it's supposed to be self-funding once you went to clean back, then you collect the money. And so I don't know if it's taken off, it's been really good or problems, but
I'll definitely get
into
into it.
it and see how they set it up. It seems similar, so we don't see money, and then as you do each project, you're able to recoup the cash and do your next one. So,
Yeah, so right now we're operating with about an $80,000 abatement budget, which we kind of foresee going into 25, 26 as well. Just because we're so early into the end of this program.
I understand the recouping of the cost and things like that, but as far as civil penalties, I mean, what is really the likelihood that you're gonna collect all that money? I mean, I imagine you're giving civil penalties to people that are on properties like that, and then they may not have the financial means to even pay the civil penalty.
So there's a couple ways we recruit the civil penalties. One is people come in and pay it. The
Yeah.
second one is if you get to a point where we're dealing like with a property like that, we also record what we call as a notice of non-compliance on the title, which says that the property is in code enforcement and this money is due. And when the property is going to sell, the title companies want a clean title. And so typically at that point, someone comes through and
Yeah,
pays so that the title can be cleaned and then we record a notice of compliance. So that's what I mean. We're starting now and it probably takes 5 to 6 years before you start seeing kind of a steady, I think it's a steady stream of this kind of money coming in based on the things that you're doing. We're hoping with 2 code enforcement officers, that's going to start ramping up. The also part of that is now we have 2 code enforcement officers. We're also going to be doing work outside the city. Because we're the enforcement agents for our water and sewer utility. So if people are messing with their water meters out in the county and they're making illicit connections to the sewer system, the code enforcement officer staff will be dealing with that as well. So.
Do that. It's just like, absolutely blows my mind that somebody would illegally hack into our water.
We have people go in, they take the meter out, put a gas pipe between the supply side and their house side and get their water for free. And we have to then go and, so yeah, you would be, if you want to have an interesting day, come by with a code enforcement officer.
Do it right on.
We get all kinds of, and this is not just our only one. We have tons of these scattered throughout the city. That we're in different phases of. We have a house where it was a hoarding situation. They got the lady out and she's living in an assisted living facility, but no one's ever cleaned up the house. And we got a call for a welfare check because everything was decomposing and suddenly that's someone up to that. So it's never a dull day in the code enforcement side.
okay, well, thank you for that. Oh, yes, you had it.
I just want to clarify the overdose and how long that took. It did not take the police department, the fire department hours to get to that overdose. Once the overdose became a lethal overdose, it became a possible crime scene. Then we froze it and did the search warrant. So just wanted you to not think, why did it take us
Thank you
hours
for
to
that
get to.
Sorry, Chief.
No problem, no problem. And then,
6 hours was mentioned. You're right.
yeah,
Thank you for that clarity.
and then also days in advance of this, we went out multiple times and offered resources. So we didn't just show up and remove people. We actually drove 2 people to a rehab facility down Thurston County, and in the day we were offering housing resources, food, clothing resources. So the city didn't come in and just strong arm people. We did this over many days, providing them with the social services as well.
And then the people who were actually squatting in the house were part of the hearing back in November when they had it declared unfit for human habitation. So
It was posted on the site in November that they had until January 5th to either correct the violations or vacate. And they ended up, it ended up being another month after that before we actually.
and really the violation we're talking about was the habitability of the structure and the property. So that's what we do on every violation, is when people are living in houses and buildings that are not
I mean, I don't,
unfit for human
yeah,
habitation.
you don't have to.
Okay.
I'm fine. Councilmember Roach?
Chief, I had a question for you on, so a house like this, I'm assuming you can consider more of them. You have like a top 10 list where you got 80% of the stuff that's happening in the city is because of 10 houses. I mean, how much action do you see out this house?
Yeah, this is a very known house to us. When there was auto theft, theft from neighbors, other issues going on at that house, it was a very known house. So we do have, I don't call our top 10 list, but same idea. We have really known houses that require a lot of our resources, like cause a lot of crime.
And code enforcement's going to be been working with Assistant Chief Boyle to come up with kind of a prioritization of which ones code enforcement sees as a priority, which one PD sees as a priority, and try to combine our list so that we have kind of not a top 10, but at least a prioritization, how we're going to deploy our resources. We learned a lot from this one that we'll be putting into play when we do that one. And thanks for all that clarification, chief. He's been doing this longer than me, so he's got all the good answers.
Councilmember Hubler?
I guess there's kind of answered this question already, but kind of not. Are there a lot of houses on this list?
Sherry, what would you say when we're dealing with
That have potential to be
like this?
like this, I would say 5 to 7
Okay, it's not too bad.
That we're aware of,
that we're aware of.
right? It's an
Yeah.
8 square mile city, so there are ones that we cannot be aware of that we haven't gotten turned on to. But the ones that we know of.
How does a house get on that list?
We start getting calls from the neighborhood saying, this place is a mess, you need to clean it up. Or the police department has going to the same house over and over and over. And they let us know, because typically when the police are going for drugs over and over and over, there are other code violations, like you're not fixing your roof, you're not doing the things that you need to do to keep it as a habitable structure. And then also if we see them, we become aware. The other way we find out is from our meter readers, because they're out in the field every day. And we do what we call a zero consumption report in the water utility. And when we get a zero consumption, they roll by the houses to see, A, is the meter still in place? Right, because we do radio read meters, and so they roll by to see if the meter is still in place, and if the meter's been pulled, they get with code enforcement team and start to look at whether or not it's just a theft of water or if it's ballooning into something.
Does, like, do you guys look at things like massive piles of trash and they start having issues like that and it starts becoming many cars and
I'll let,
that kind of stuff?
I'll let Shelley answer that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so usually these kinds of properties, there's a ton of different violations. You don't have to have all of that going on to be in violation for public nuisance, which would be uncontained trash, or rubbish, which is, tires, boxes, things that don't belong through out in the yard. So most of these properties have that as well. You can have a cleaner property that just has a trash issue or just has a car issue. So it kind of.
But they usually follow trajectory, they're fine, and then they start stockpiling garbage, they cut off garbage service, and they quit paying their water bill, and it just starts, and then, depending on where we're at with that trajectory, we have different intervention strategies.
A lot of times the owners have passed away, and so there's nobody really responsible for the property. And so the people that are living there, you're finding the property, but they don't.
When if you have people that are like piling up trash and cars and vehicles and things like that, do you guys send them letters first and then, or do you contact them by phone or just letters?
Oh, we
first?
do letters first, so everything is legal and in writing. We have forms for it. We can start with a warning letter, giving them 30 days typically, and then we can do a notice of violation, giving them another 30 days and explains their options for voluntary compliance. For most violations, they can have up to 6 months at no charge to get, because we give them 30 days initially. If they need more time, which sometimes just do, depending on the nature of the violation, it doesn't cost them anything to enter into that agreement with the city. If they need more than 6 months, they can do, it's called a voluntary correction agreement. That one is $500 fee, and then it gets recorded on the title. And usually those are things that maybe need like a 2-year range. A lot of times that has more to do with permitting, things on the shoreline, stuff like that. That's a little bit more complicated and a little bit out of our hands. If they are going through those voluntary compliance steps, they don't get to the civil penalty step, and they don't have consequences like this. So there's a lot of different paths that it can take.
And then one other program that we're working on standing up is a dumpster program. We've worked with Mary's, they'll waive the drop off and pickup fee. We just have to pay the dump fees. So part of that $80,000 that we have is to, if there's just a homeowner that has made some bad choices, gotten behind, and we've had this in areas, they just don't have the money or resources to actually get the property cleaned up, we can bring the dumpster in. Have it load the dumpster, and then we call Murray picks it up, takes it to the dump, and we just pay the dump fees and reimbursement for the dump fees. So there are, like I said, there's different intervention strategies based on where we're at. And this is literally, we have tried everything, and it's been going on an ongoing problem for many, many years.
Okay, we will move on to item F, discussion action items. We have AB 2414, ordinance B 2414. This is an ordinance amending Bonnie Lake Municipal Code at 6.04, and it looks like it is Gina Burke.
Thank you. So just for reference, this was, went to the November and December Public Safety Committee. And there were some requests from the, council members who were on that committee. Then I think Councilmember Baldwin was the only one, from the three who's still here, for some more information and for some changes. So just kind of the history. On April 22nd, 2023, I went back and researched the actual incident that kind of went to us, wanting to make this code change. There was an animal bite that was reported to Metro Animal Services. It was reported as a pit bull mixed dog that went into another person's private property and bit their dog on the cheek. No blood, didn't break the skin, and the person who reported it wasn't really super interested in filling out any sort of victim form or really participating. They just wanted it to be an informational report to Metro Animal Services. Metro Animal Services did some investigation. They were able to identify the pit bull dog and the owner. The owner was had an infraction of animal at large filed against him because the animal went onto this other person's private property. In July of 2023, that case was dismissed due to a technical loophole in our code, which is that the way our code reads, the animal is only at large if it's on public property, not if it's on private property. So if the dog goes onto another person's private front yard or backyard, it's technically not at large because of how our code is written. So our proposal is to fix this loophole so that the animal is at large, whether it's on private or public property outside of the owner's property. There were some concerns about empathy towards animal owners who it's just a one-time accident. The dog does not have any aggression issues. So I have added some factors for the prosecutor to consider when asking the court to waive or lower the fine. This would be that there's no history of a similar incident with the animal or the owner. There's no history of the animal engaging in any sort of aggressive behavior. The owner takes corrective measures to make sure the dog does not become loose in the future, like fixing the fence, fixing the door, however the dog got loose. Any sort of affidavit about a hardship to pay the fine or other circumstances that are in the interest of justice, because it's hard to know every factual situation that will come up in the future. So the prosecutor will weigh all those when asking the court to lower the fine.
Do you have any questions or thoughts?
Not on this particular change here, but typically the process of a dog that's been multiple times. How does that play out to where it's had multiple attacks, the owners haven't complied with what the court is telling them to do?
So there's a process for a dog to be declared a potentially dangerous dog. They have to have at least one incident where they inflict a bite on a human or another animal. They chase someone on the street, or there's some sort of, history of a propensity to attack. That has to be witnessed by a person who's willing to come in and testify about it, or by a Metro Animal Services officer. So there has to be at least one incident, and then the dog is declared a potentially dangerous dog. And then there's a whole bunch of requirements about that dog basically not being allowed to be out. And I mean, if it gets really bad, then, Metro Animal Services can seize the dog.
I mean, you know my concerns from before, as I talked about them. I do like some of these changes. I know that in our previous public safety meetings, some of our concerns that we had mentioned is just that people a lot of times do have difficulty with their dogs, just in a regular setting. And so I think, is this wording basically just to stop? Because I think there's a nuisance animal, right? And then there's an animal that bites. And I feel like those are two different situations, right? You can have an annoying dog that continues to get out and run around people versus like a dog that gets out and is biting another person's dog or biting a person. And so I was looking above that and it looks like it's including both, you know.
The factors,
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
I'm looking at the violations and penalties.
yeah, so it would apply to basically the whole section, because it's in the,
Okay. So it's an animal that just is loose, right? If I'm reading this right. Like a person can be guilty of a misdemeanor if their animal is loose. If they allow their animals to be a nuisance, if they fail to keep their animal in heat, confined. Right? I'm reading that right? You feel like, okay.
it's a class 1 civil infraction, but yes.
Okay. Again, I, like I said before, I don't want dogs going around biting people. But even just like in item 3, which is on page 29, as far as like what the paper says on the bottom corner. Where it says the person owning or in control of the animal takes corrective measures to prevent the animal to become at large in the future. And I had mentioned before my dog that continued to try to escape and we would take corrective measures every single time, but he wanted to die, not in the backyard. And so he was finding every way to get out. And so I'm just, again, I just want to make sure that whatever the wording is here, I want people to be protected if they were trying to keep their dog confined. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, and this is,
Yeah.
I mean, a policy decision for you as council members, of how you want, animals that are loose, whether you want it to be a infraction. Because I understand the empathy towards the dog owner. There's also the person who is maybe in their front yard or their backyard, you know, with a small child just enjoying life, and then a dog approaches them and off leash, and they don't know that dog's history. Some dogs are friendly, some dogs are not.
Yeah, I think there's a difference again between a dog approaching people versus like a dog that is going to hurt a person or a child. I feel like those are two different things, although, you know, obviously people should not allow their dog to be a nuisance and out of control. It's just the wording. I don't know how I feel about it yet. I don't know what your two thoughts are.
Yeah, and then I have a friend that she lives technically in the city limits, but they had a Great Pyrenees. And that Great Pyrenees could jump any fence, could get out of any confinement. They had this big, humongous space built just for the dog, and it could get out of anything. And so and it's the sweetest dog in the entire world. So how do you, like, if somebody got a dog like that no matter what you do, how do we look at that and go, well, it's not like that it wasn't a lack of trying, they're trying. So how do we make sure that we're not finding someone or telling them they're in trouble for something, even though they're trying really hard to not?
Can I say something? Dina, so you would first have to have a complaint from them, right?
Yeah, you'd have to have somebody who calls Metro Animal Services, and Metro Animal Services, when they come out, they educate the homeowner or the dog owner on what to do to, you know, put the dog on like a long leash line, how that dog is getting out. I mean, usually the first time they're called out, you know, this incident, there was a bite, there wasn't actual, like, skin wasn't broken or there was no blood, but usually the first time, if there's no violent incident, they start with education.
But again, it comes down to, I guess, I'm on the same page here with Angela, listening to her talk, it made me go, oh, wait a second here. Yeah. What happens if that person, Metro Animal, can go out and tell them, hey, you can do this, and they've already tried it. And so how do we as a city enforce something that they're already trying to do? And I understand like the aggressive animals, we don't want, you know, of course, and we don't want dogs to destroy.
Or even people that aren't
Right.
doing corrective measures,
Right.
right? Like, they're just letting their dog do whatever. That's not okay either.
I mean, this is a policy decision. I mean, if you're okay with, I mean, this will mean that if a person repeatedly has a dog coming into their front yard that's private property, and they call Metro Animal Services will say, I can't, we can't file an infraction for having an animal at large because of this loophole. Whereas if they're out on the street or the sidewalk, it could be filed. So that there could be, I mean, it is a weighing of the balances of, there are people that probably don't want to be approached by a dog in their private front or backyard.
So currently that dog can be in the road in front of the person's house and they can call Metro. But if it comes to their doorstep, they can't call Metro.
I mean, they could, but we can't file that infraction of animal at large.
In your example, where you have the neighbor that has the Great Pyrenees dog that keeps getting out, you would have to have somebody calling to complain about that happening. Otherwise, animal control isn't going to respond. They're not going to get involved, and so it's never going to come to the prosecutor.
I just worry about like if somebody ever did, like and they actually rehomed this dog because they just couldn't contain him. But, that's at the heart of a homeowner. I love my dog and I don't want to let them go.
Right.
But so it's just like finding that balance where we don't want to prosecute somebody for trying, but we want to make sure that people are protected. And I get, somebody doesn't want to go, you don't want a dog straying in your yard. I mean, I totally get that. We have a neighbor's dog that comes to my yard and poops and pees in my floor. And I will never complain because I love my neighbors too much, but it's obnoxious.
Chair Baldwin, it's really difficult to hear with the HVAC going on.
I know.
I would say about 90% of the conversation we can't hear because the voices are so low or everyone's turning toward that direction. Is it possible for people to speak up?
Yeah, absolutely.
Get some kind of amplification.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's quite loud.
Even for the person I'm guessing online, I don't know where the mic is.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Nancy. I appreciate that. Well, I guess, what do we want to do? Do we want to move this forward? I'm assuming this is because it's an action item, so it's to move it forward for council discussion. Is that what that is?
Yeah, I make that motion.
Second that. Okay. We need a full council discussion. Okay.
So February 27th, full discussion.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Great. Okay, let me get to my page here. Okay, we are now going to item 2 under F, AB 2416. Ordinance B 2416. This is an ordinance amending Bonnie Lake Municipal Code 10.33. And again, it is Dina Bird.
Yes. Senate Bill 5606 was passed. It went into effect in January. It made some changes to the state's racing law. Drifting can now be prosecuted under the racing. But the big change that we wanted to make sure is adopted in the Bonnie Lake Municipal Code is that it changes the impound and forfeiture for a vehicle involved in racing. So if a vehicle is involved in racing, the police department would now be able to impound the vehicle. And if the person has a conviction for racing, then the vehicle is subject to forfeiture. So the recommendation would be to, the way I phrased it, we're just adopting this new state law.
I mean, I read everything and I appreciate you taking care of that and doing that. So I'm okay with moving it forward. How about you two? Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Would that be for February 27th for consent or full discussion?
I'm assuming, I'm okay with it being on the consent agenda, but
Yeah, my thought was when you're not in the committee and it just drops into full council and there's no context or background,
Yeah.
I think it's good to have it separate, at least just explain that it's just complying with the state law.
could you put it as a discussion item, but then could be voted on after a discussion? For February 27th?
That's fine with me.
Yeah. Yeah. No?
Would you want to get a workshop first then?
Did we not just discuss it for a moment?
Yeah, good.
Not?
Yeah, when I, when the park race and,
Yeah, just whatever is the next.
Yeah.
Okay. That's great. Okay. Okay, we are moving then to, item F, number 4, AB 20, oh, did I miss one?
No, I think I'm the next one. The
Okay, yes,
24.
AB 2417, ordinance D 2417. This is an ordinance amending Bonnie Lake Municipal Code 14.130, date of birth.
Thank you.
Mhm.
So as you saw earlier, we're really ramping up the code enforcement program. 99% of the people in Bonnie Lake are great people for code enforcement officers to go out and talk to, but unfortunately, there is that small population that can be aggressive and interfere with them while they're performing their duties. This would increase the crime of interfering with a code enforcement officer from a misdemeanor to a gross misdemeanor. So for reference, a misdemeanor, the maximum penalty is 90 days in jail and a $1,000 fine. A gross misdemeanor is the maximum penalty possible is 364 days in jail and a $5,000 fine. This just shows how serious we're taking the hard work that they're doing, making sure that they're kept safe. It also means that a person that's accused of this crime and found guilty has a lot more jail time and fine hanging over their head.
Questions, thoughts? No, I'm cool with all of it, but it's the thing, like, I don't feel like what Dan was just saying, that was maybe what I was gonna be like, I feel like this needs to go to the council. Because I feel like we need to make sure that every council member knows, the general public knows what we're talking about. If we don't, then all of a sudden everybody's like, oh, wait, what was that? And we want to make sure people know, like, street racing is illegal. We should not be allowing that. And we have a lot of it that does happen. So we want to make sure that people know you cannot street race. I know there's a lot of things that just get passed on consent agendas and then nobody knows it actually exists in the world. But if we have it on our council, we have minutes that say, hey, you can go. Maybe it'll be something that more people will pay attention to.
Absolutely.
Do you have any thoughts?
I was just going back
Just to make
so
sure.
what is the thing they would do, this is like a code enforcement officer goes on the property. I missed the first part.
Oh, so if somebody interferes with their job, harasses them, interferes, they're posting a notice and I don't know, somebody, I don't know if there's any, comes out and kind of prevents them. I don't know if you have any examples of
Yeah.
field.
Yeah, and so, and we usually don't go on private property, because we don't have warrants, so we basically do most of our work from the right of way. And take pictures from the right of way. We can't walk up to the front door, same place mailmen can walk, but we don't have warrants to go walking around people's property. But there has been times in which people, code enforcement officers are trying to take pictures and they are not so much verbally assaulted, but physically assaulted, pushed down the ground. We just want to make sure that when people are taking those actions, that there are penalties in the courts. And so if that were to happen, we actually call the police department. They would have to do the investigation and refer the charges to the prosecutor's office.
I think again, first of all, I'd like to start by saying that I don't want code enforcement officers to ever feel unsafe. I want to start with that. I did, in looking at this, I talked a lot with my husband and interested, obviously he sees these kinds of things too, the things that you're all dealing with. And so with the 90 days in jail and $1,000 fine, which I know is the maximum penalty, I understand that. And looking at kind of the next part, the maximum penalty for the gross misdemeanor, it being up to 1 year in jail and a $5,000 fine. And I even understand that sometimes it's not even the money, it's like the penalty of jail time that people don't want to experience, obviously they shouldn't want to. But I was reading item D, and it's on page 41, where it says, and I think I'm just asking for clarification because I think people, when, like I just had a friend call me and tell me code enforcement, like came to them. And, these are luckily very even-keeled people and, they are reasonable individuals. However, I know that people can be a bit, even just a reasonable individual can be a bit heated, if you will.
We expect a certain amount of
Okay, pushback.
pushback and frustration.
Yes.
Because 95% of people who find themselves in code enforcement, especially on the permitting side,
Yes.
don't realize they're doing something wrong until we show up.
Yeah,
And then we are also then telling them that the money they spent, the time they've spent could be in jeopardy.
like a stop report.
Yes, we expect that there's a certain level of frustration that usually 99.99% of the time dissipates pretty quickly once we have that conversation.
Okay,
And we even anticipate that people will be angry and frustrated with us as we work through this thing.
yeah,
What we're talking about is people who are harassing,
yeah,
getting on cars.
Yeah,
getting
no,
in
I see that.
things. And it's hard to define those things. And I guess
right,
it's one of those times where that's why there's checks and balances to the system. Because if the code enforcement officer feels unsafe, their first call is going to be to the police department.
right.
And then it will be the police department who makes the call of whether or not they have crossed the line.
Okay,
Then those charges are referred to the prosecutor, who then
Yeah.
again verifies that we crossed the line. So the code enforcement officer is not the actual one filing the charges. They would just be contacting the police department, who are trained
right, to decide.
to decide at what level something is happening.
Yeah, because I
Am I
think,
saying it right, chief?
yeah, I think my main concern is just, obviously you guys know that I care very much about definitions in government and what exactly does this mean when you say this? And we obviously have Randy and Shady, who are amazing people that work with people too, right? But I've maybe met some code enforcement people before that are, they're not YouTube,
Yes.
right? They're not YouTube. And so, like, I think on the part where it says any person who intentionally intimidates, obviously, obstructs, obviously, impedes, yes. But then it says or interferes.
And I think that's more of like, Shaylee's the only to drive a stop work order in the ground. And we do have those on the right of way, just right outside the property
Yeah, yeah,
line.
yeah.
They grab the hammer out of her hand. They
Oh.
grab the stake out of her hand. They
Physically.
physically
Yeah, yeah.
interfere.
Okay.
We know people are gonna rip down stop work
Right,
orders. We just
like,
drive,
I'm literally picturing.
we drive back the next day.
Like, you're gonna go to jail for 1 year.
Yeah, we drive
That.
back the next day and repost the stop order and let them know if they take it down again, it's a fine.
Okay,
We're talking about if someone like grabs the stake out of her hand, grabs
Yeah.
the stop work order out of her hand.
okay. I mean, you
I agree that definitions are important in government, but I think here, there also has to be a reasonability to it, because I don't know if I can, in a definition, define all of
Right.
that without making the definition is multi-pages.
Yeah, yeah.
To cover every single little thing, and so I think it comes down to the the good judgment call of multiple agencies seeing it the same way.
Okay, yeah. Any final thoughts before we move on to the next
Yeah,
item?
I mean, I agree with you, it's hard because you have somebody goes on your private property, no matter what the reason, there are people that are gonna freak out.
And that's why we don't go on private property.
I was gonna say that everyone made a mitigants, don't do them until you go to the door.
No, we legally can, but we,
Every once in a while.
Yeah. To work things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had experience, we had a neighborhood where we contracted with one person to go and do their backflow.
Yeah.
Everybody knew,
Oh, mhm.
and the guy walks on the property to do it, and the one guy forgot about it, and he jumps out of his house and just went crazy. It's like,
no, we
just here because you hired me, there, people are.
yeah, people definitely don't go private property anymore, and when we're doing code enforcement activities, and I can tell you a funny story later, but we're actually using the same police authority powers that the police do, so if we go on there without a warrant, we're violating constitutional provisions, so we don't even do. All of our investigations are from the right of way or from another public observation area. And so that we try not to have those types of issues. And so this is someone coming off their property typically to engage with the code enforcement officer. If they're standing at the door screaming and yelling, we're just gonna do our job and then drive away. And if they're there by themselves, they're trained to drive away, go with the other code enforcement officer, come back later. We talk about de-escalation all the time.
Yeah.
That's our job, is to de-escalate the situation. The only time we would go on the property is when we have a court order, like we did with that property.
Yeah.
And in those cases, we typically have the police with us.
Okay.
How do you, I get all these, how do you know when somebody is violating code enforcement? Like if they don't have a permit, say that, I don't know. Codes.
When it comes to construction stuff, we have lots of inspectors in the fields and we run across things all the time. And our first job is to educate them, and if they're willing to come in and get the permits, we'll work with them on that type of thing. And the river, and the reason that we require permits is not because we want to be mean. It's two things. One, we want to make sure whatever is being built is being built safely. If you just Google deck collapses, you will find lots of decks where people have been hurt seriously from deck collapses. We have re-roof permits. That's another big one that we always get in the spring. And the reason that we require re-roof permits is we were having seniors who were getting taken advantage of, or people were basically roofing over their vents and their attics were molded. And so we started requiring re-roof permits to make sure that people in the community are getting what they're paying for. Also, that's the other side of it. So it is a balance. It can be, depending on who your officers are, it can be not a pleasant experience, but that comes with training and policy setting from John and my position about how we do this and how we work with people. We try to work with people, and we only get to the bad stuff after we've tried everything else.
Okay, so then do we make a decision to move it?
Okay.
Do we talk about that? Okay. Okay. Okay, we are then moving to item 4, AB 2418, resolution 3199 for the lateral bonus program. Chief Berry.
All right, thank you very much. So what's before you here? I brought you hard copies because Monday morning I realized I factored some of the numbers wrong and it was too late to get the electronic packet fixed before it got to you. So I want to just be in full transparency, bring you hard copies and tell you exactly the changes. On budget information, it talks about budget explanation. There's a current overage of approximately, it is now $140,000 instead of $160,000. That is the only change there. And in the costing sheet, when you looked at the FTEs, January and February moved from 6 FTEs to 4, and April moved to 4 FTEs. And those are only changes for the numbers, but the concept will remain the same. So what I'm asking for is in 2024 only, I'm not asking for this to be repetitive and it limits out at 4. I'm asking for a $25,000 hiring bonus per lateral police officer. For those of you that don't know what a lateral police officer is, they've been through the academy, they've completed the field training officer program, they have their certification, and they have at least 2 years of service, and they're currently a police officer. What that does for us as a hire is it means we can put them on the street in 3 months or less as a solo police officer. So currently in our vacant police officer full-time employees, we have a salary savings by April of $140,000. April is approximate because I think some of the retirements are actually gonna be sooner, but by the end of March, it's guaranteed $100,000. To fund this program requires no more supplemental budget. It doesn't require me asking you for anything. It's just using existing funds in my salary budget line. So why do I want to do this? On March 1st, we're going to hire, we have 2 officers starting. I'm really excited to have them. They're entry-level officers. They will not hit the street handling calls on their own until March 1 of 2025. We will pay $10,000 a year or $10,000 a month approximately each month in salary and benefits. So an entry-level officer costs at least $120,000 before they handle their first call by themselves. A lateral officer can get there in under three months or less. So that is a savings per officer of $90,000. That's an equivalent saving to the city of $360,000 by letting us use that money. The real question becomes, what is the benefit to citizens? It's better police service right away. Right? We're able to put police officers who are trained, who have experience on the streets in 3 months instead of a year. That reduces call response times. That increases our proactive patrol. It also decreases the stress of police officers because as they have less people covering, they start calling in sick more often because they're tired because they're working double shifts, and we get in this real negative cycle. So this is a way to help us fix that problem right away. And again, it doesn't cost anything. other than letting me reallocate funds from my existing budget. I will also tell you this, that on Friday, I'm interviewing 2 lateral officers who know I'm presenting this. They know it has not been passed, but they were discussing it, who are both from agencies within the South Sound 911 region. That means they already use the same computer writing report system. They use the same MPS dispatch system. Everything is kind of plug and play. So they're very valued. This is something you see in lots of the agencies around here. This isn't Mark coming up with a crazy idea. This has been very proven. So my request is, you know, for you to move this forward to full council. I don't want to take it to consent agenda because I know with this kind of expenditure, council's gonna want to talk about it.
I really appreciate you doing this, and I think lateral officers are absolutely amazing. It's really hard to get officers to even lateral. Because of just the amount of benefits that they already get at their current agency. So I really appreciate this. I think this will really be helpful to citizens. Yeah, and then it's just a one-time thing in a budget that you already have. So, thoughts? Where we move on?
I agree. Yeah, laterals are always better, but I mean, I love having new officers because that helps you to go to train them your way, the way you want it done in our city, not just how another city does it. We know every city does things different. When you hire an lateral officer, do you feel that they are as easy to train to do it? Or in a way, or
So far, the officers that we have are people I've gone out. I'm literally cold calling people I know that I think are good officers that will get violent. This is our culture here as a city. This is our culture here as a police department. I think you'll be a good fit here. I'm not going out, and I mean, it will go out and just anyone will apply, but the officers that I've been calling and recruiting right now are very much people I think will understand the system and fit in with it.
okay, good.
That's great. Very good. Okay, we're moving to item G, open committee discussion. Anything either of you wanted to bring up?
Great job, everybody. Like, it's a lot of learning. There's a lot of things you guys do behind the scenes that a lot of people don't know. That's why I think it's really important that we take things to full council a lot of times, because then the community knows what you guys do behind the scenes, and then they understand why we pay salaries to all the people we pay salaries to and where their tax money is going. If they know that you have this person that's basically, you know, double dutying it for us right now. And, you know, we've got a judge that sits here and is part of every discussion and learns what we're doing and is, you know, actively part of our city. You know, and for you guys out there, law enforcement, well, you can imagine the things you guys actually see out there. So I would just say thank you for what you guys are doing, because it makes everybody else's jobs easier.
Councilmember Roach?
Sound good?
Okay, we are moving on to item H for public comments. Nancy or Jeff, did you have anything?
Yeah, go ahead. For the record, Nancy Lee, I'm a resident, and congratulations to Chair Baldwin and welcome Councilor, is it Hubler? Hubler, and Councilmember Roach, also I think a Lake resident, so yay for definitely. I want to compliment the code enforcement team, hearing how you're trying to collect the fees versus on the taxes versus a lien. Is that a new part of the law?
Yeah, there was I forget the exact year, but there's a change and they created an unfit dwelling state statute
Okay,
that allows the abatement cost if you're using that specific statute to go on evictions.
awesome, because it's so hard on the lien, the same thing, and also being able to collect the, I guess, the fines via the different routes. So awesome for that. And welcome. We haven't met the chief yet. Welcome to Gary. I do have a question only because I was a finance director for many years. I was super supportive of bringing the laterals in, but I'm hearing about the salary savings. Was any of that salary savings had to be used for overtime during the time that you were down some officers? I'm only thinking about down, you know, September,
Right.
when you, it's full disclosure, it's like all of a sudden you need some more OT, so.
Correct. I have a different budget line for my overtime and currently that's well within the margins of where we should be at this time of the year.
Congratulations. Good. I hope you get your officers in.
Thank you.
A couple of things, we stay in close contact with Cascade Water Alliance. My name is Jeff Lincoln, I'm a resident of the city, been here before a couple of times. We stay in close contact with the operations folks, Cascade Water Alliance. The lake refill is supposed to start on Friday, and they expect the lake to be full by the middle of March. So we expect to see more traffic on the lake. I have not been in contact for a number of reasons with Mr. Johnston, Public Works. I'm not sure if they got the gate fixed.
He's no longer with the city.
He left us.
That's what happens.
Double.
No, there you go. That's the guy right there.
So, in fact, did you get the automated gate fixed when the water was down?
Which, at the boat ramp,
Yeah.
that I do not know.
Okay, so you got about a week, and I know, I know that, the former director, was in touch with a vendor that installed that system, which would be the only one that could repair it. So if it got done, I know that he was supposed to meet with the vendor in September, I believe. And, I don't know where that action is, but you're gonna run into the same fun that you've had the past 2 years, with enforcement and questions and frustrations from people that are both residents of the city and not residents of the city who want access to the lake. And there's nothing on the website that says what the procedure will be this year, but I know it pops up different directions around the Facebook, whatever. That will be a big frustration, and you'll be scrambling to get the system in place and get the announcement made of, are you gonna sell passes? Is the second project to expand the parking, the dedicated boat trailer parking, is that gonna be done? I don't know if it made it into the budget, but the frustration surrounding Allen York Park is gonna come back to the surface again.
Yeah.
And you might as well address it now.
We try to keep them, the public that makes the comments, we try to keep them informed and give them an avenue to speak to their representation. A lot of them are county people, not city people, but one of the comments that happened in the last 2 weeks, now they know the lake's gonna be full fairly quickly. It'll be a month earlier than it normally is. And the comment was that the Bonnie Lake City Council passed a law that non-city residents, that only people who live on the lake can access the lake. So that's, that's how they take something and then mold it. And then we try to then say, actually, here's what happened. And here's a link to the page of the city. Here's the county's, the county has the, now the reservation system too. But we don't know what's going to happen as far as when will the launch be available and will the parking be the same process as last year. So those are our questions.
Okay, yep, Jason.
So Chief and I have already been having conversations, and we are meeting weekly with both operations, my department, the police department, and preparing an action plan for how we're going to deal with Allen York Park as a whole operational issue from the summer. And Chief and I plan to have that completed and rolled out first part of April, so that we can start doing, that's the goal. Let's say we'll make it, Chief. But sometime in April, I'll have that ability to at least tell people what we're doing. We don't have all of the answers.
So would the permits not be sold until that time?
I think the permits for Bonnie Lake residents,
Will be sold at that time, and not till April?
I think, and that's what we're trying, there's a couple of things that we're still trying to put together.
That's what we were gonna try to help them,
Yeah,
because
we're-
they're just like, they, trust me, they'll say all that, but then April, or March 15th will come, and there'll be like 3 fishermen on the lake. But they were all like this, waiting. As soon as they hear that we're gonna get to recreational level, they're just.
Yeah, I'll just say that we are planning a social media push as well as like some stuff on our websites, because if I have my way, it's not finalized yet, security will look substantially different than it has in past years. There's going to be paid parking, there's going to be a variety of things. So we do want to get that out so everyone knows. And from my side, on the public safety side, I really want to push that out, because I want the people who used to come here and do whatever they want, I think they could get away with it, know that that will no longer be going on, so.
Is the conversion of that other ball field still on track? Is it in the plan? Because you've got what, 29 trailer spots now on that one converted lot? And there was another 54 or something like that planned for that other ball field.
That was pulled out of the budget and the decision was to leave that as well.
That's in our parks, trails and,
Yeah.
that's in our parks, trails and open spaces plan that we're currently still working on. More parking
Yeah, I would,
could be added.
long term, there's a plan to try to add some more parking, but how much?
Yeah, I don't know where you came from or how much familiarity you have with this. There's a lot of people that are not happy. And when I say that, this doesn't affect us personally. We have our own boat ramp, we have direct access to the lake, you know, none of this affects us. But there's a lot of people that are very, very unhappy with the scenario at Allen York. And the county, I think, resolved a lot of their problems by putting in a reservation system. And, you know, that's pretty slick. But the Allen York is a very frustrating point of contention with people who live around here, both city residents and non-city residents.
Jason, you were the assistant, weren't you?
Yeah, I've been with the city for 2012.
Yeah, I was thinking that.
This is
Thank you
a
for what you
different
do.
position.
Yeah, I think there's just gonna have to be further discussion because we haven't been able to come to a point of agreement in regards to what to do with the ball field. There have been other conversations, circular conversations, really.
Yeah, you know, just, you got about 25,000 people. You've got 1,700 lots on the lake. Of those 1,700, maybe 400 have access to launch a boat. There's 7 maintenance companies. They have access to launch the boats. There's a lot of porosity in the ability to get to the lake and launch a boat, whether you're a resident or not, whether you go to Allen York or not. It's a complicated set of circumstances, but 29 parking spaces for boat trailers for residents of Bonnie Lake at Allen York is not adequate. And, you know, you can go back to this, but hindsight's 2020. Building a ball field in your lakefront property was not a good idea.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it. Okay, we are moving on to item I, which means we are adjourned.
Great job.